Are we allowed to say that the album is trash? Once the Oyinbo started clearing away from my ears, I started saying, oh wait, this album is lit.
People also expected him to make sad music or to talk about the loss of his son, and that was going all over Twitter. And he might have seen that and said, right, I'm going to do the exact opposite because I feel like as an artist, you also have to keep your fans on their feet.
The grieving process is lifelong. Saying we also have to keep in mind that this is not Davido's first loss. And
He loses like 2 friends a year.
he may never, ever talk to us about how he feels. We owe it to him.
What do we owe him? Davido dropped his new album Timeless on Thursday, and people on social media are commenting. It's trending all over social media. If you don't know, he lost his son late last year, and he's also lost a lot of friends over the years, and he's taken some time off of social media. Today we're gonna have some people, some Davido fans. We're gonna talk about our take on his album, if we like it, if we don't. Stay tuned and let's get into the video. Everybody, please introduce yourself. Let's start with you, Nneka.
Hi everyone, my name is Nneka Obiekwe.
And what is your expertise? So introduce yourself and tell us why, you're maybe an Afrobeats fan, and where exactly where you're located. So let's
Sure, absolutely. I am located in the DC area. I am a Davido super fan, actually. Actually, I'll add I'm a Davido and Choma super fan. And so I'm excited to talk about his album and all things Davido.
So I'm Daniel Obiekwe. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I personally am a musical artist myself. So I feel like that's why I might have kind of an interesting perspective on things. I also have dealt with some pretty tragic losses here recently, so I can kind of speak to it from that perspective as well.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Chima.
Yeah, my name is Chima Obaigbena. I'm reporting here from London. I'm also an upcoming artist. My stage name is Manta. And yeah, I love all kinds of music, Afrobeats, pop, hip hop. So I'm excited to see what this is about.
All right, let's get into it. So, what did you guys think of the album? Did you enjoy it? Let's start with you, Nneka.
Okay, so it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite album. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really have the highest expectations either. I just think Davido has a lot going on. He already mentioned that he just redid the album. There are one or two decent songs. I know Feel is one people are getting hype about or already playing on their Instagram. Personally, I didn't find many of them to be memorable, and I hate to say it. As a super fan, I hate to say it.
Okay.
Wasn't his best fit.
Okay, what about you, Chima, from London?
When I listened to the album, it gave me exactly what I was expecting. I think he gave you the typical Davido fashion. However, considering what he's just gone through with, the loss of his son, I feel like there was just one song that touched on that aspect, which is fine. But I think this really
What song was
gave
that?
I think it's LCND. Yeah, the second to the last one. Yeah, because he talked about, him having a loss in his life and how he can still rise.
Okay.
But yeah, my favorite was Ujuju and Picasso. I think Davido is known for giving very uplifting songs for the club, songs for parties, and I think he's just replicating that formula again.
Okay, and then Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, so I kind of agree with everyone. I also didn't go into it expecting, the latest and greatest Davido album. I thought what he delivered was, if I had to give it a grade, I would say like a C plus. Like a solid album, but it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't something that I feel like is going to change Afro beats or anything like that. But I thought he delivered a good album. I don't think he necessarily, I wasn't looking for him to speak on, everything that had just happened and kind of, have one of those songs or one of those albums that was just giving us exactly how he felt. I think it was just him just reminding himself of who he was as an artist.
That's interesting. Okay, so I guess I'll give you my take. When I first heard the album, when it came out, literally the night it came out, I don't know whether it was like I was tired, but I didn't love it. I thought it was like, I even like posted on Instagram, are we allowed to say that the album is trash? I posted that because, with all the situations that he's dealing with, some people might like blur those lines. But when I listen to it again and again, and I feel like the Oyinbo just came out of my ears, because like when you're abroad, your flavors are different. Your taste is different than when you're in Nigeria, right? So I feel like once the Oyinbo started clearing away from my ears, I started saying, oh wait, this album is lit. This, like, they're good. At first I thought there were like 1.5 songs that I liked. Now I think I like at least like 5 of them. And so I feel like they've grown on me, and so that's interesting like that we say this now, because I'm curious to see how it's going to sound, what we're going to say in like 3 months from now, like when we're raging in the club and dancing to his music. I also want to add that what makes Davido probably the biggest Afrobeats artist in Nigeria, and probably, I don't know, maybe in Africa, I don't know, but in Nigeria, the reason why is because he never ditched that African sound, and he stayed committed to it. Whilst Wizkid was, infusing R&B and what's the other one, reggae, and all these sounds into his flavor, Burna Boy is doing some sort of global fusion, adding pop music. Thames is a pop artist too. When they started doing all these things to tap into international markets, Davido said, no, I'm the biggest in Africa, and I'm going to be the biggest in Africa. So I think that's the difference here, because when you look at the other artists, it's easier, especially when you're abroad, it's more palatable. But when you're in Africa, Davido's sound, it penetrates.
I agree. I think Davido stays close to home in comparison to other artists. And I think, to your point, there is an influence that you can hear from different artists based on, where they're recording from. You even noticed at one point Wizkid came back to Africa to do some of his songs. He spent a lot of time in Ghana, right? But I do think that there is, Wizkid and Burna in particular are trying to have more of a global fusion and intentionally get the sounds from where they are and where they're spending time, whereas Davido really stays close. I mean, he's always surrounded by his friends, his family. He's constantly speaking his own language, and I think he intentionally does that as a part of his branding and as a part of his sound.
But also, I think that his impact is bigger in terms of numbers, because ultimately, yes, in Africa, we don't have the purchasing power, that is in America or whatever. But the number of people that are Davido sycophants and Davido superfans are so much more than any other of them.
Yes.
But because the purchasing power is not there, he doesn't see the money.
Right.
In his art. First, fair enough, his dad is a billionaire. He probably has more money than all of them anyway. So maybe that's even why that he's not even selling his soul or selling out. I just put it like that. He's not selling out to go international because he doesn't have to sell tickets. He already has a private jet. He already, you know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting dynamic. Daniel, do you have any thoughts as an artist?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think he's just a very authentic artist, and he's always going to stay authentic to himself and, to his home. And I think this album was a good example of that. Like you said, I think it will be one of those albums that, like, everyone's initial reaction is going to be based off of, like I said, their expectations. It's like, I was wanting to hear this sound. I was wanting to hear this. And so when you heard what he actually produced, it might not have met that expectation, but that didn't necessarily make it bad music. It didn't make it that it wasn't good art. It just maybe wasn't what people were expecting. And I think when people give it a chance, really sit down with it and just listen to it for what it is, which is just, it's just a piece of art that he gave to the world. I think they'll realize and really begin to appreciate it more.
And I think that when it comes to Afrobeats, Africa leads, and it's going to take time, but because it's not palatable to us initially, but I think after like a few months, when we start seeing it playing at weddings, playing everywhere, we're going to be like, oh, this is lit. I think the same way like when Burna Boy dropped Twice as Tall, and I was in Nigeria at the time. I was living in Nigeria at the time, and that sound with Coldplay and all these like white people that he had on his music, that was not palatable to me living in Nigeria. So I was like, what is this? What? So it took me a while to then be like, oh, that's actually a lit album. It took So I think it's interesting when you're making content for the diaspora versus when you're making content for the continent, and how your strategies kind of like your dynamics change. Chima, do you have anything to say from the UK? Like, because the UK has a great like sort of fusion of all cultures, so it's easier to be more adaptable when you're in the UK to like different sounds. So what are people in the UK saying?
I think they love it. I just feel like many Nigerians are rooting for Davido, not necessarily because of his music, but mainly because of his personality and just how strong he is and just his power in the Nigerian music industry. And one thing I find interesting is that I feel like he really knows exactly who he is. He knows what he's not. He knows what he offers to the music scene. And yeah, I feel like people also expected him to make sad music or to talk about the loss of his son, and that was going all over Twitter. And he might have seen that and said, right, I'm going to do the exact opposite, because I feel like as an artist, you also have to keep your fans on their feet. You can't be too predictable. So that's probably why he decided to go for more of a, party club type music instead of making a sad song. I
But
think
but do you feel like it's out of touch? Because there's a power in making music based on the stage of life that you're in. There's more authenticity. Like there's so many artists that have done this, like Usher, Confessions. It's probably like one of the most successful albums that conveyed his real life experiences. Daniel,
Yeah.
what's your take? You said that you recently dealt with loss. What's your take on that journey of like putting that into your art, and sort of like, I don't know, like, is it too soon for him to put it in his art? Is it like, well, yeah, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think it's really hard to put a timeline on that. And I think I would even say it's unfair because everyone deals with it differently. Like I know I made some songs about it. Some of them I released, some of them I never did. And I think I'm sure he's made songs because he's an artist. That's sometimes how we get our ideas and our feelings across. But he might have made them. And to Chima's point, he might have said, I see what everyone's saying out there. I see that they, want me to speak on this and speak on that, but I'm going to make that choice not to give that because maybe he's just not there yet to be able to do that. And I think it's more authentic to, if you're not ready to, not to, and to hold that back and to keep that for yourself than to try to force it and to put that out there just because of what other people feel like you should be doing.
So I guess I have another question about, I just thought as though, yeah, sure, he had an album ready already before this happened. And he said that he went back and he like, made more music and redid the album in a way. Does this kind of convey that like, and I understand that everybody takes their own time to heal. You can't put a timeline or you can't dictate how someone is supposed to heal. But is this kind of giving, does it seem a little bit rushed? Like he's not dealing with his issues and he's just kind of like glazing it over with content? Because when you think about, Davido has been nonstop. Like he's always releasing songs for the past maybe decade, right? Consistently. Unlike all the other artists, right? He's always consistent. And that's part of why he's so big. And then all of a sudden, he goes blank off social media, off everything. But he's still working in the back end. So it's like, is he not giving himself time to grieve? Or like, what are your takes on it? I want to hear from you, Nneka.
Yeah, so I think, as you said earlier, the grieving process is lifelong. And I think that we often talk about grief as though 6 months has passed, you should be over it. We're already seeing some of his fans saying things like, you'll have twins in Jesus' name, this and that. That's a beautiful prayer and hope for someone. However, we don't know what it is that Davido is experiencing. We also have to keep in mind that this is not Davido's first loss. If you remember, he's lost many friends in the past few years. He lost a bodyguard maybe 2 years ago. And
He loses like 2 friends a year. He loses like 2 friends a year.
yes, exactly. And he's talked about in his music and in interviews the impact of those losses on his music, on his life, on his mental health, on his emotional health. But the loss of a child is something that I don't even know. I'm not a mother. I don't know how to put that into words. I can't even begin to imagine. And I think that to be a good fan is to support whatever process he's using. And exactly as Chima said, to support the fact that he is still doing music, to love him and his music simply because we are rooting for him, to not put on any unnecessary expectations of how he's supposed to grieve or when he's supposed to give us music talking about it. It's also to respect emotional boundaries. And emotional boundaries are that he may never, ever talk to us about how he feels after the loss of his son. He may never talk to us via his music, via an interview. And that is
And
his.
he doesn't owe it. He doesn't owe it to us to do that.
He does not owe it to us
He
at
does
all.
not.
We owe it to him. We owe it to him. We're the people who
What do
have
we owe
been
him?
enjoying his music. Think about it. We're the ones who've gotten joy out of his music. We're his fans, right? We owe it to him to respect his boundaries and to love him regardless. That's my personal take on it. And to Daniel's point, we don't know if he's written songs and music and just decided to keep it for himself, because I would imagine that the artistry journey is a personal journey in and of itself. But my take is give him his space, and if he never speaks on it again, let that be that. Let's let him move on.
Yeah, I think this album is probably his journey of still healing, or his outlet, because he saw it, what was going on in his family, in his world, and I feel like he just took all of that to make something joyous and to kind of have an outlet for Nigerians or people all over around the world to enjoy instead of, bringing back old memories. I think he's looking into the future of his career, his family. He's taking into consideration, Chioma's feelings, her family's feelings, everyone around him, not just himself.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Sometimes we don't see the full optics, when we're, coming up with our own sort of conclusions. So are those the last words? Anyone else? Any more thing? Anything else to say?
I actually do,
Yeah,
because I just wanted to add,
I'll let
I
you
think
talk, Nneka.
as fans, I think Davido, out of everyone, has fans who actually think they know him. Like, and I think he indulges it. And I think in a really respectful way, that's what makes him likable, is that you really do feel like he's your friend. I mean, people add 30BG on their description. They put his album photos as their profile photo as though they are part of the crew. He has a community like way to his brand that makes you feel like you are actually a part of his crew and his family. Hence why the Choma relationship was also something that people really got into and again felt like they were a part of his family. And I think it's beautiful, but I think this is an example. This time right now after the loss of his son is an example of when it has gone too far. And again, people are putting too many expectations. People are waiting for him to say something on Instagram. People are commenting as recently as like last week, "We hope you're okay." It's beautiful, but that's also why he's not on Instagram. Like, give the man some space to breathe and let him come out and just do what he loves to do without having to answer to it. But I think it has a lot to do with just his fan base really feeling like they know him. And if you watch
That too,
more,
but also I think part of it is also because Nigeria doesn't give you the space for emotional intelligence, just because of the hardships, just living the day to day.
yeah,
People that they lost their father too, and they haven't dealt with that trauma, or they lost their cousin, they haven't dealt with that. They don't know how to deal with that. So it's like,
it's true.
I forgot it. What's your own? Is it not just your child? Like, who
Yep.
knows?
Yep.
Yeah. So people are walking around with all sorts of mental health disorders and stuff like that haven't been checked, and so they're just projecting that onto him. That's the audience that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so thank you guys so much, and I'll definitely call you guys on for some more discussions in the future. And I'll see you guys later. All right, there you have it. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. You're watching Brand Video Pro, and I'm your host, Kenim, and I'll see you in the next one. A peace.